You are listening to a free version of the Majority Report with Sam Steeder. To support this show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
The Majority Report with Sam Steeder.
It is Tuesday, November 1st, 2016. My name is Michael Brooks on a Michael Tuesday, and this is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Wes Clark Jr. will be joining us to talk about climate mobilization. The climate mobilization movement says we need a World War II response to the climate crisis. We need zero emissions over the next decade. We need to completely reorganize our economy and infrastructure if we're going to keep up with the science of the climate crisis. It also could be a vocal point for organizing in the age of Hillary Clinton. But will we have an age of Hillary Clinton? James Comey's incoherent, reckless, dangerous, and frankly unfair intervention in the presidential election, doing his best to stay viable in Republican politics, or trying to head off a leak, I guess if you're going to be more generous, but announcing that, well, not really anything. But apparently those emails are still causing us problems. Donna Brazile out at CNN. Not great she passed those questions on, although I would expect that the Clinton campaign probably knew that at a forum in Flint, and a forum in Michigan, that there would be a question on Flint, and a forum with a person exonerated from death row, there would be a question about the death penalty.
Not good.
Not good. Speaking of not good, new information on Donald Trump's ethical contortions on his taxes, as he makes clear that he will be the first presidential candidate in the modern era to not release them. Speaking of transparency, and even as Comey sloppily intervenes, the Clinton brigades are hitting back with every piece of Russia information they possibly can. Some of it's credible. Some of it, to me, reads like total nonsense. Can this election be over soon, please? Ben Carson has some interesting insight as to why Donald Trump's taxes shouldn't be released. And Donald Trump reaches out, speaks Hindi, even as Paul Ryan admits that he has voted for a textbook racist but will not mention his name. And the civilian casualties pile up in Yemen as Saudi Arabia continues to pummel that country as they fight under the auspices, the invitation of the Yemeni government, Houthi rebels, and we supply them with all the arms. I don't wear a watch, but I kind of feel like I should when I look at the watches that this new sponsor is putting out. Yeah, I'm talking about Movement watches, of course. Sam told everybody that he gave the Movement watch he gave to Nikki, which is very nice, but still leaves me watchless. But they're great-looking watches, and it was a company started by two broke college kids that wanted to wear stylish watches but couldn't afford them, so they started their own watch company. Basically, it's not in some ways that different from the starting of a business like this. It's a bottom-up internet company. Built, launched, and, YouTube, podcast, direct-to-consumer relationship. Movement watches are just $95. At a department store, you're looking at between $400 and $500. Movement figured out by selling online, they're able to cut out the middleman and retail markup, providing the best possible price, classical design, quality construction, and styled minimalism. I like styled minimalism. Over 500,000 watches sold in over 160 countries. Big league. Get 15% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to MVMTWatches.com/majority. There's a link to it as well on our website. This watch is a really clean design, and you'll get compliments on it as soon as you put it on. And now it's time to step up your watch game. Go to MVMTWatches.com/majority. That's MVMTWatches.com/majority. Join the movement. How was everybody's weekend?
My weekend was good. I went to a Halloween party and went as candy corn.
No comment.
With a yellow t-shirt and orange pants.
Sounds very innovative, Matt. But fun. Kelly?
My weekend was good, too. I did not go to Halloween parties. I hate Halloween. But my dog...
Why?
Yeah, why? I'm over it.
She's scared of it.
I'm over it. I'm
Okay.
just over it. But my dog graduated from having to sleep in her crate all the time and having to stay in the crate when I leave. And now she can stay in her little playpen, and she can sleep for half of the night outside of the crate.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a new life for her.
That is a new life for her. We have a new Two Dope Boys dropping today, as everybody knows, Tuesday and Thursday. What do we talk about on this new Two Dope Boys?
The NFL is on deck with the brand F-Up. They don't see the multiple cliffs coming out they're going to hurdle over. We've also got Facebook Live, some stuff on the video, and Drake's sort of industrial creative complex of what he keeps pumping out content.
And creativity in the age of constant production. I'm going to print something out, Matt. I need you to grab it for me when it prints. Are you hiring but don't know where to post a job to find the best candidates? Posting your job in one place just isn't enough to find quality candidates. If you want to find the perfect hire, you need to post your job in all job sites, and now you can. ZipRecruiter already has 9 million resumes that you can search through on their database. You can add multiple people to your account to make it the most efficient for your team to find the best hire. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to over 100 plus job sites, including social media networks like Facebook and Twitter, all with a single click. ZipRecruiter is a search engine for finding and posting jobs. Find candidates in any city or industry. Just post once and watch your qualified candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. No juggling emails or calls to your office. Quickly screen candidates, rate them, and hire the right person fast. If you have any issues, ZipRecruiter's friendly and human support staff is ready to help. God, that's a big deal. Find out, some of these places, incredible the extent to which they will go to not give you any human contact. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 100 million businesses, as featured in Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, New York Times, TechCrunch, and CBS. ZipRecruiter's website shows trending career fields, cities, and searches. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. And one more time, that is for free. ZipRecruiter.com/majority. Now, looking your best is not free. But the final sponsor for now that I want to tell you about has certainly made looking your best a whole lot more accessible to everybody. And of course, I am talking about Indochino. Indochino is a suit that... sorry, I need to reset this. Sam's gotten the Indochino suit. You can see a pattern here in these product offers from these sponsors, which is that the upper 1% of this show sucks up all the resources, while the workers don't get the Indochino suit and fitting or the movement watch. But that said, I am fairly familiar with Indochino. I actually was familiar with them before they came on board. I know some people that have used their services. I'm actually looking forward to using it myself. It's an incredible offer. And like it or not, dudes look good in suits. Everybody will attest to that. Everybody knows it. Indochino is one of the largest made-to-measure menswear brands. They're making it easy for men to get a great-fitting, high-quality suits and shirts at an incredible price. And here's how it works. You visit Indochino, that's INDOCHINO. There's a link to it on our website, majority.fm, Indochino.com, or drop by any of their 9 North American showrooms. Pick from hundreds of fabrics and patterns. Choose your customizations from lapels to pleats to jacket linings and more. Submit your body measurements. Kick back, relax, and get ready to step into the best, most stylish suit you've ever worn in just 4 weeks. And this week, my listeners can get any premium Indochino suit for $389. $389. I mean, that is really nothing for a good suit. At Indochino.com when entering majority at checkout. That's 50% off the regular price of a made-to-measure premium suit, plus shipping is free. That's Indochino.com. Promo code majority for any premium suit for just $389, free shipping. You'll never have to worry about badly fitting suits or extensive trips to the tailors again. Get ready to look like $1,000,000. We will be right back with Wes Clark Jr. on the Majority Report.
Classic. Timeless. Forever. Iconic. DJ Carla, a divine leader, shine brighter, bonita, mommy meter, line sniffer, never poetic rhyme writer, chief ebony empress getter, celebrity apprentice, a devil show, big up to Africa, Mexico, Hennessy, margarita, venison eater, so dear spread them here, don't be acting innocent either, don't me relax me, it's only to the nasty, I'm just a phony assassin, a lot of roll me, I'ma tax them, a lot of sisters hold me to something holy and Catholic, cause the rosary and gold flashing, just an attachment and accessory, to my dress code, now everywhere, all I see is Pablo, Esco, last time I checked I was still breathing, my neck was still freezing, now everybody got an Escobar season, to every baby on the album cover existing, this trend I was setting, it came to fruition, I'm assisting to push the culture forward, to all my go supporters like a local black-owned grocery store, cause in the hood, passed down through blood, it's a dub on that, we get government aid, spend it at they stores, putting their kids through college, we need balance, so we can lease and own deeds in our project, so I'm asking G's to go in their pockets. The racial economic inequality, let's try to solve it. My signature fade with a bevel blade, that's a major key. I told her she's smart and loyal, I like that, that's a major key. Start a label, run it, sign yourself, that's a major key. What Tony had on the table, it's like us, we a major key. Still underestimated, every mistake a lesson, Mercury retrograde. So if that planet spin backwards up in the heavens, maybe it's affecting backward. You don't be repping lately, I'm playing chess with babies. This is nursery, impersonating, rehearsing me, nothing like me, I'm the first to meet, and that's quite certainly so official. Come get this issue, so women.
Welcome back to the Majority Report. I'm Michael Brooks. Joining us now is Wes Clark Jr. He's one among many leaders in the climate mobilization movement and a co-host at the Young Turks. Wes, how you doing?
I'm good. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing great. It's really good to be having you on. I know that you're on the road, so just a heads up to everybody, there will be a little bit of static. But this is important information, so we'll get to it. I want to start. We're going to talk about sort of the big picture of the climate crisis and this climate mobilization work you're doing, which is important in and of itself, obviously, and also kind of provides an interesting way of looking at how people might organize themselves in the case of a Hillary Clinton presidency. But before we get there, I think in some ways there's an inkling of this, the kind of movement that you're talking about in terms of what's happening in North Dakota right now. All of the issues that get raised by climate, justice, the environment, corporate power, bottom-up organizing, and solidarity, it's all there. So I'm wondering if you could start the conversation by giving your view on that crisis right now, and then maybe start opening up to the how that opens us to the bigger picture.
Sure. Well, look. If you know the story of what started this beyond the pipeline is we put the Sioux on reservations in the 1870s and 80s, essentially massacring them to drive them onto these reservations. And then we came around right after World War II, and the U.S. government, through the power of eminent domain, seized all their farmland, bottom land. It's what they were surviving off of because they switched to, agriculture. So we took away all their agricultural land, pushed them up onto, clayed, rocky soils that they can't farm. And so we've essentially impoverished them for the last 60 years. And not only did we ruin their farmland, we also took land of theirs, skirting and around these dams that was supposed to have been given back to them, which hasn't been. And some of this land is the land that the Dakota Access Pipeline crosses. So when you hear people say that's our land, it really is their land.
Right.
Study reports by Congress and court decisions have said, give the land back. It's up to the Army Corps of Engineers to do that. But no president has come forward and made it a priority, whereas they should, because not only have we horrendously mistreated the tribes in the United States, not just the Sioux, but the Navajo, the Hopi, any number of tribes, we've just treated abysmally. But the president actually has the power to rectify the situation.
And he's not doing it.
Commander-in-chief and head of the Army. No, of course he's not doing it.
So,
of course he's not doing it.
Yeah, go ahead. Why, of course?
Well, and this is a more of a historical, philosophical thing. If you go back to the foundations of the post-World War II order, it was pretty much set in place by the Dulles brothers, who were proteges of, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the guy that split Panama off of Colombia to build the canal at the turn of the 20th century. And, they came in and they said, well, let's wire the whole world for hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons and oil were the only international business the U.S. really had at that point. And so, of course, you had an intermingling of our intelligence services with the oil business from the very start. So then you had things like the overthrow of Monologue, which was, of course, pulled off by the Dulles brothers, ousting Arbenz in Guatemala, any number of coups and assassinations that occurred through the 1940s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah, and just to include
many people think our own president, John F. Kennedy, as well as RFK.
There are definitely some people in this office that think that. I want to just touch for a real quick second on Mosaddeq. We talk, and I know, I do a lot of Middle East stuff, and just two quick important things to note about the USbacked coup against Mosaddeq. Number one, it's something that is, like a footnote at best for a lot of people in the United States, but it's a defining event in Iranian history. I mean, it's like, it is a identity forming thing that shapes across the political spectrum, unless you're just like a sort of Pahlavi, sort of royalist. You take that event very seriously. And number two, I mean, as you say, that was all about, he wanted to take essentially a kind of Norway-style social democratic approach to their oil, and that was an affront to the United States and the United Kingdom, and so there was a coup. I mean, it's as simple as that. And that's just very important for people to understand, and I like that you sort of put the global context around the appropriation and the abuse of what's happening right now in North Dakota. Let's get...
Well, the global context fits even tighter if you understand the very nature of colonialism and neocolonialism,
right?
Which is to extract value without concerns for the people that live in the area.
Right.
And so they brought this mentality that they were able to execute around the world for essentially 30 to 40 years completely unopposed. And of course, all these things always come home to the imperium center with time. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing the extraction of value, not only from Native American tribes, but if you want to trace, the real roots of the whole Trump thing and the rage among, whites throughout the Midwest, it's that they are victims of colonialism without understanding it. because all the profit and all the decisions are made in our colonial capitals of New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and San Francisco. And the local people have very little say in how their own local economy is organized.
Their jobs have been shipped overseas. Their local economies have been decimated. And the only message that they've gotten from the sort of centers that you're talking about is you need to toughen up and brighten up and deal with the fact that you're going from having a $70 an hour manufacturing job to at best a $12 an hour service job. And then at the same time, you also need to be more socially progressive and not be a moron. And, again, of course, I'm not in any way, and I know you're not in any way justifying the incredible racism and bigotry that is there as well. But that sort of dual message of you need to realize that you're just a casualty in economic progress and be happy with it. And that's because you're not good enough to compete in this economy we're designing. And then at the same time, you really should be more socially enlightened is a toxic and disgusting formula that, way too many Democrats have brought into and pushed over the last couple of decades.
Oh, of course. They look down on people from the Midwest and the South culturally.
Right.
I mean, it's why it's called flyover country, because to them it doesn't matter except as a source of wealth for themselves, not for the people that actually live there.
Right. So, Wes, I want to talk now about the Climate Mobilization Project, and it's just a couple of...
Hold on, let me, because, I don't have too much of a time restriction. I just wanted to go into a little bit about the actual No DAPL protest.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Pretty much constant contact with Phyllis Young and other tribal leaders.
Go for it.
To help assist them in this. Yeah. Right now, it's a very disorganized group because you essentially have 6 autonomous camps, no central leadership. So that's hampered a lot of their ability to get information out. Mm-hmm. It's hampered their ability to get the mainstream press involved, even though we all know the mainstream press really doesn't want to make this a big story.
Right.
But they are suffering serious human and civil rights abuses day after day there. I'm not sure if people are aware, but they have helicopters that are actually flying and trying to knock the Braves off their horses with the landing gear.
Yeah.
They're shocking people with tasers. They're gassing people. They're beating them. They're using sonic cannons against them. They're putting them in dog cages when they're arrested. And they're doing mass arrests. And according to Phyllis Young, who I spoke with last night, the sheriff up there has ordered 100 body bags. So it needs to be de-escalated, and it needs, frankly, the president to come in and put his foot down and actually do something for once in his administration that has a moral call, which he has failed to do repeatedly throughout his administration. Morals are something that we seem to have just thrown by the wayside in our country in the last 20 years in terms of such vague concepts as efficiencies or, market realities, without understanding that these efficiencies and market realities are themselves, human creations.
Right.
There's nothing scientific about any of them. It's all based on more or less a story we all consciously or subconsciously agree to.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's actually, there's 2 things there to underline. One is that this is an active crisis and situation. Actually, related to that, I know a lot of people yesterday, there was a request from people on the ground that local law enforcement was using sort of Facebook to monitor who was actually there. And so there was a request that people use Facebook to check in to sort of create confusion and complexity. From that perspective, other than I guess what we're doing, which does have a role in it, which is highlighting it and using platforms to talk about it, what do you think the most concrete way people can show solidarity across the country now is?
You can write a handwritten letter or a typed letter to your elected representative in Congress. That's the first thing. They don't pay attention to emails. They don't pay attention as much to phone calls. But if you write letters, real letters, not form letters, they act these people up who are elected representatives. The next piece is go there. Donate time, donate money, donate food. If you have, rock star level earplugs or shooting range mufflers. They need those because the sonic cannons are one of these, devices, crowd control devices they invented in the last 15 years that they'd originally deployed to Iraq, and now, of course, they're deploying them against Americans here at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider the tribes Americans. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a veteran. I was an Army officer actually in the cavalry in 2-7 CAD, which was the unit that was wiped out by Sitting Bull at the Battle of Little Bighorn. And I served with Native Americans in my unit. And they fought with us in every one of our wars. And they bled with us. And for us to treat them the way we treat them is inexcusable, and it's immoral.
It's disgusting. Okay. That's helpful, Wes, in terms of what people can concretely do. When we get to this climate mobilization project, there's a couple of things about it that really struck me when you first told me about it as significant. Number one, I think you and I look at this in a very similar way, which is that it actually is important that Hillary Clinton defeat Donald Trump, but that in a certain sense, that in some ways is just the beginning of the battle. I mean, you're kind of averting a potential... it's just the beginning. You're averting an absolute emergency, catastrophe by defeating this clown fascist guy. And then you're setting up, and my frame would be, I think, a battle and a political contest between sort of progressivism and neoliberalism, which is a sort of long overdue, and it's an important battle inside the Democratic Party. And in some ways, I think the kind of defining issues of that are the climate crisis and inequality. I think those are the sort of organizing, sort of center point crises of our time. And with climate mobilization, this project, there are two sort of things or three things that are interesting about it. One is that it gives people that sort of frame to have a big kind of global response to the Clinton administration and in terms of fighting that battle. Number two, which I really like about it, on this other show I co-host, Two Dope Boys in a Podcast, in the intro we talk about having a shout out from the margins. And the idea is that in any piece of culture, powerful ideas always start marginalized. And it can, run up the train from, sneaker culture, filmmaking, to dealing with the climate emergency or arms control. You have to be out on the horizon engaging with really innovative, provocative ideas that push the dial forward. And that's exactly what climate mobilization does by saying it needs to be a massive World War II style response, that there needs to be zero emissions within, I believe, a decade, and that this needs to be a central organizing radical thing. It can't be ameliorated by either, your own consumer decisions in terms of the products you buy, obviously, but also not by the
market can't fix it.
The market can't fix it, and neither can just alone these sort of transnational Paris-style agreements. It's something that's going to require citizens, governments, markets, and technology synchronized and moving aggressively, and also questioning some of our biggest assumptions about how society operates.
Well, also, you got to remember, a lot of people, these are exactly what you said, they're assumptions into how society operates. Most of us have been trained since birth to be obedient and to be spectators, in essence. It's what, sports are about in high school. It's what television's about. It's about sitting and watching and just, you're not in charge of your own destiny. When we look around the world and we see countries from Czechoslovakia to Ukraine to South Korea to the Philippines to Serbia to everywhere who say, no, dude, this system doesn't work. We are at the point where our system does not work. The Constitution does not function. It doesn't function because of the entrenched interest within it. And essentially, we've been governed by lawyers and PR for 20 years. And I think, Trump is a perfect example of this. The PR doesn't work anymore. People know they're being lied to. And our biggest weapon against this system is simply the truth. It's to live an honest life. It's to be open. It's to not fall for the lies, but also not to repeat the lies, not to get into bed with them. Because what's going to happen is if we don't do this, we're dead, man. We're dead, like, not in 50 or 60 years. We're dead a lot sooner than that. You'll begin having the cascading effects of global warming in the economy. 7 years.
Talk about the science of that for people. Give them that truth from the science of just where we're at with the climate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Look, we're at the point on the big picture is the oceans have absorbed all the heat and carbon they can absorb. The air's absorbed it all, and right now the polar ice caps are melting as well as methane is being released from the tundra. This will accelerate into a feedback loop that will literally kill all of us. And it will happen much faster than people understand. If you look at the movement of the temperature in the last decade to 2 to 3 decades, you'll see a slow, steady increase. And right now, we're at the start of a rising geometric curve. Now, how this will play out is, and this is why I feel we need to get it done immediately, because we're not going to suffer from this for another 8 years. I mean, realistically, is it works its way first into the insurance industry. Right. So, for instance, Americans who are 5, 6, 7 years in on a mortgage at a house that's within 20 feet of sea level, that house won't be underwater when they're done paying the mortgage. But by the time they're done paying the mortgage, it also won't be insurable, because all these numbers and facts and figures are already working their way into the actuarial tables from reinsurance companies. Right. So, if I just bought a house in Florida for $300,000, that was going to be my nest egg I was going to retire with, and I try and sell it in 2026, I'm not going to have any buyers. So all that capital is gone. It vanishes. And this will have a cumulative effect among the economy to essentially destroy the economy. And once you don't have capital, you don't have the money to enact the necessary changes.
Right.
That's the kind of long and the short of it. But on the science side, I mean, look, it's not just climate change, it's ecological overreach. It's the overfishing of the oceans. It's the reality that there's something called the Ogallala Aquifer, which runs underneath the Midwest, the so-called breadbasket of America that we all learned about in, 7th grade history.
Right.
But it's going to run dry in 2023. It's a non-replenishable aquifer. So once that runs dry, you're going to see a food crisis. Now, that doesn't mean people are going to necessarily be starving, but it means the price of food is going to shoot up because it's an international trading commodity. So, for instance, I don't know how many people know, but during the Irish potato famine, Ireland was exporting food for profit throughout the entire famine.
I do, having a great uncle who was an IRA fighter. I certainly know about that, yeah.
So we want to get in front of these changes and get in front of this looming disaster and head it off. And the only way we're going to do it is for people in this country to wake up from the sleep they've been in for 30 years. We've essentially entertained ourselves to death and filled our heads with soma. And it's time people awake and they do something about it. And this isn't just a call to progressives. This is a call to Republicans. This is a call to Christians. This is a call to every aspect of our society, because we're all going to perish from this. And we can argue about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin after we've saved ourselves. But until then, we need to focus on saving our civilization and fixing it.
Wes, I want to get to some of the specific steps that climate mobilization is calling for, but another thing that is distinct about this project, and you're just pointing to so much, is, and I know it's sort of in the inception of climate mobilization, because a lot of this is built on, again, just raw actual climate science, and the climate science is, the climate is indifferent to our, personal feelings or psychological defense mechanisms or consumer addictions or whatever. But there's also it doesn't care. It's an immovable force. It's like LeBron. But when we talk about this, you're also pointing to these sort of like, again, I guess I would say like sort of psychological sort of defense, like this way in which we're dealing with this incredible crisis, which is scientific, it's political, it's economic, and I think it's also very moral when we talk about the long-term viability of life on this planet. It's moral when we think about the sort of mass extinction of other species that we're creating. And I think that there's a quite natural, maybe not natural is the right word, but there's a response of like, I don't want to deal with this. It's bigger, it's more complicated. It isn't, it's not in my day-to-day life. And what can I really do about it anyways? The order of magnitude is too big. So what's the part of this when you talk about people waking up and having some sense of agency and power over this stuff? What's that, what sort of sparks that? I mean, I could see the truth, like the truth is important, but the truth could also be debilitating for some people because they could just be like, Christ.
It can.
Yeah.
It can. And much of the non-governmental organizations and, environmentalist groups are run and staffed by doomers. They're like, we're totally all going to die. They don't have a solution because they're all, first of all, they've all been co-opted and financed by the elite essentially anyway. But they don't see a route out of it because what they're more concerned about is their own personal paychecks and their status and their positions and stovepiping things as opposed to addressing the greater problems. Now, I will tell you, a lot of people don't realize the truth. And that is also a function of psychology. Our movement was started by a clinical psychologist, right, Margaret Klein Solomon. And what she realized is there's the psychology of crowds. So, for instance, if I had a heart attack and I was alone with you in the room, you'd be like, oh, my God, dude, Wes is having a heart attack. I better do something.
Right.
But if I had a heart attack when I was on a subway platform in front of 40 other people, what happens is they look at the eyes of the other people around it, and the other people will be like, oh, dude, that guy's crazy, or he's having a seizure, he's on drugs, or whatever. I'm just going to stay away from him, not my problem. And then someone goes, oh, well, this is an emergency. Okay. And then the person dies, on the ground having a heart attack. That's what we're going through in our country. We all look at each other and we say, well, Jim isn't worried about it. Bob's not worried about it. Carol's not worried about it. Mm-hmm. I guess there's nothing to worry about. Or, hopefully someone will fix it in the future. But I will tell you, my father was the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. I've worked in 7 or 8 different industries. And I'll tell you for a fact, if people think there's someone running the world, they're wrong.
Right.
There's no one running it.
Right.
It's a group of people surfing a wave of popularity or money who are trying to figure out how can I stay on top as long as I can. There's right. No one actually running it. Like when you watch a science fiction movie or like that asteroid movie Deep Impact and Morgan Freeman comes out and he's like, well, this is what's going to happen and this is what we're going to do. No such group exists in the U.S. federal government.
Right.
None.
Right.
We are not organized that way. So there is nobody thinking on how to solve this. And that's why we've come up with climate mobilization. And that's not just about activating people and having them recognize the emergency, at a grassroots level, but also to go after the people at the top at the same time because they all know what's happening. They are of the mistaken belief that they can somehow ride this out on a farm they bought in New Zealand or in a bunker they built, in Washington State, and you can't because what's going to happen is the phytoplankton's going to die in 50 or 60 years. That's the base of the food chain. That's what provides the oxygen for the planet. And when it's dead, unless these people can manufacture several hundred years worth of air and food in their bunkers, they're toast too.
Right.
But they won't even make it that long because when the construction workers who built their bunkers, when their families are hungry, they're going to dig those people out of the ground like truffles. There's no escaping this.
And
there's no prepping for it.
There's no prepping. There's no escaping. But meanwhile, it's there are major human rights issues posed by, like, as an example. Okay, if you want to build your bunker and live in that fantasy, it's not going to work, and it's a problem in terms of how you relate to the rest of society. But when Saudi Arabia or China is like bioprospecting in Africa and kicking people off of their land and trying to sort of like preset, like we have a certain amount of food and water access over the next couple of decades to ship back into Saudi. And we're finding another form of colonialism, in fact, to kick people off of their land. That's another major human rights and security issue right this second. So, even in that sense, it's alive now. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's alive now. Like,
yeah.
Africa is going to be going through some really painful times in the next 10 years, primarily from Chinese colonialism.
Right.
But we have to recognize in our country that the Chinese will go to nuclear war with us over trying to stop them from doing this. Other countries are getting ready for climate change. This is how the Chinese are dealing with it. They've only got like 3 to 4% of their land is arable, and their water is decent now after they've poisoned it. And their whole plan is they're going to be growing their staple crops in Africa, which will then be exported back to China. Right. Now, this is going to have horrible implications for the Africans.
Yep.
But if you have to understand the South Chinese Sea islands that they built bases on, the submarine base that they built in Sri Lanka, these are all to protect their food supply coming to them from Africa, and they'll go to war with us over it. So we're in also a kind of dangerous stage geopolitically, because what's happening is the people running our government are, and you know this, we all hear it, they're fighting ideological battles from the 1960s and 70s. They're not living in the current reality. And they're also trying to fight these ideological battles and geopolitical battles, looking at those times as reference points, as opposed to looking at right now. And it's dangerous
right.
for us in the future of our country that the foreign policy needs to change as well as all these other things. I mean, think about how many billion dollars.
Wes? All right, we're back with Wes Clark. We'll have that cut out when we post the show. Go ahead, Wes.
Where did I lose you?
You lost us. You were talking about basically these ideological battles that were being refought from the 60s and 70s, and that, yeah. And it's about foreign policy, too.
It's also about power and money. So, we spend trillions of dollars a decade protecting private oil tankers leaving the Persian Gulf. That's a subsidy for that private business. Instead of us spending it on our people here at home, we're doing it to protect the money of Middle Eastern despots and our own kind of despots here in the oil business.
Yep.
And most Americans will wake up to these things because it's with the internet, with the power of distributed communications online, the truth is not controlled by a small group of people anymore. And there is a rank injustice in it that we've got to fix. If we look at our legislative process, this mobilization is not just about changing, it's about eliminating a lot of the laws that were put into our system through corruption over the last 40 years by the wealthy, by the oil business, by others, to force us to use these products, because these products are incredibly profitable. Because all you do is you dig a hole in the ground, you stick a pipe in it, and then the person just keeps making money.
Right. It's not that complicated. And I just want to be really, I would recommend that to follow up on what Wes is saying with regards to China and the sort of future security landscape. There's a book called Resource Wars by a guy named Michael Clare, which gets into this stuff. And also, the Pentagon. The Pentagon constantly puts, or maybe not constantly, but the Pentagon has certainly put out many reports highlighting that from their point of view, the climate crisis is a major security challenge in the 21st century. Now,
the Pentagon is the only federal institution that is aware of the problem and the severity of the problem. But the Pentagon, the military follows the orders of the civilian leadership.
Right.
And so it's the civilian leadership that has caused this foreign policy disaster that we see day after day unfolding around the world.
Wes, in the last couple of minutes, I want to get back to there's the pledge to mobilize from the Climate Mobilization Project. And it's basically this is citizens calling on states and governments to basically immediately commence social economic mobilization to restore a climate that is safe, stable, and supportive of human civilization. Reduce our country's net greenhouse gas emissions 100% by 2025. Enlist tens of millions of Americans in an efforts to rapidly expand carbon-neutral energy, agriculture systems, and conduct groundbreaking research on a large-scale adoption measures, as in World War II, with full employment will be achieved. And it goes on to talk about what candidates will be voted for, where money will go. It's very aggressive, it's very actionable, and it's visionary. If you take the premise that somebody is sort of woken up and is ready to take these issues on, and maybe they even want this to be the organizing framework for how they view the next several years, how they respond to the presidency of Hillary Clinton, and even for what it's worth, I mean, in some ways, even, God forbid, Donald Trump. It's not like, these issues will get worse, but they're certainly not going away under him. What are the sort of next steps in terms of that kind of citizen action, where we go from here before we sign off?
If you want to check out the website. I know.
Yeah, there'll be a link to it.
It's a beta website. It needs some work, dude.
I didn't want to be the one to say it, buddy.
No. Hey, listen, the number one thing we all need to do is be honest, and I'll tell you, the website needs serious work.
Okay, cool.
But at the same time, there's a lot of information in there about what we're doing. You can form your own groups, your own mobilization groups. You can spread the message to your friends and family that we are, in fact, in a climate emergency. And we must act for the sake of our children, for the sake of ourselves. We can't wait on this. That's really all I got to say. I don't have
tell everybody
specifically.
Will you tell everybody the website name, and we'll have a link to it at majority.fm, but will you tell everybody?
Sure. It's theclimatemobilization.org.
Theclimatemobilization.org. Wes, I really appreciate your work. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. And, I hope that this is the beginning of many conversations and many actions. Thanks a lot.
This is, let me tell you, Michael, what this is the beginning of. This is the beginning of a real revolution in the United States. Not a violent one, but a revolution in how we see the world. And we're going to make next year, make the 1960s look like the 1950s. Because everybody knows the system's broken, it's corrupt, it doesn't work in any of our interests, and if it starts doing it, we'll tear it apart.
I'm with it. Let's do it.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Michael.
Thanks.
I hope you have yourself a good day, my brother.
You too. Be well. Talk to you soon, brother. Okay. All right, everybody. We are going to go to the fun half of the program where we'll have a little levity after contemplating the end of the planet. But no, it's true. I mean, there was a saying in the 1990s, I think Al Gore said this, that the absolute bare minimum of what is scientifically necessary is the absolute maximum of what is politically possible with regards to the climate crisis. And now we're probably in a phase, I mean, under this current system, obviously the way things are designed now, the operating system is just not up to deal with that challenge. And what's very interesting about climate is we can have all of these debates with issues, like Obamacare. Everybody knows that there's serious flaws in Obamacare. It's not fair to many middle class, to some middle class people, not many, some. But it's also a significant improvement over what was before. And now, obviously, we need to keep taking steps towards, at the bare minimum, public option, ultimately some type of single-payer universal system. With climate, they're just literally, I can acknowledge that President Obama, through the stimulus, through the coordination with China, through the Paris Agreement, through finally not giving approval to Keystone, he has a climate and an environmental record that he can point to some positive marks on. But this is a scientific issue. I mean, you either respond to it or you don't. And the overwhelming scientific consensus is in line with what Wes was saying. It's in line with what Naomi Klein was saying. And she says in her book, in some ways, that it's easier to picture the end of the world than picture the end of capitalism, which is a very disturbing thing to contemplate. But it will require serious shifts across the scale, across the board, across the spectrum. And the climate mobilization work that Wes and his others are doing is definitely an important part of that. So in the fun half, we're going to talk about Donald Trump speaking Hindi. We are going to talk about war crimes in Yemen. And at 646-257-3920, we'll take your calls. Subscribe to the Majority Report on iTunes if you don't already. Even if you're a member, it's good for the Majority Report sort of numbers. Write the Majority Report a review. Subscribe to Two Dope Boys in a Podcast on iTunes. Write Two Dope Boys in a Podcast a review. I've been getting a lot of great response from that E-Ink Magazine shout-out. Top 10 best business podcast. JustCoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Also, that's the type of business you definitely want to be supporting when you're dealing with the climate crisis. 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. We'll see you in the fun half. Everybody else, bye-bye.